Chioma never imagined love could taste so bitter. She was a young woman with dreams in her eyes and strength in her hands. Every morning, she woke up early, went to work, and made her own money. She was proud of herself, independent, hardworking, and determined to build a good life. Then she met Uche. At first, he was charming, always smiling, always saying the right things. Chioma thought she had found the man who would stand beside her through thick and thin. She loved him so much that she rented a room for both of them to live in. But love, she learned, could be blind. Uche had no job. The only thing he seems to care about was smoking with his friends. Every day, Chioma went out to work while he stayed back, wasting time. Soon the sweet words stopped, and in their place came insult, shouting, and blows. He would raise his hand at her without shame. Even worse, he cheated on her openly, as if her heart was something to be stepped on. Still, Chioma stayed. She told herself love could change him. She even used her savings to buy him a small bus so he could work as a driver. She hoped that maybe if he had a job, things would be better. They weren't. One day, Chioma fell seriously ill while pregnant. She was rushed to the hospital, and the doctors had to perform an emergency surgery to save her life. She lost the baby. She lay on the hospital bed in tears, but Uche was nowhere to be found, except with his friends, smoking and laughing. He couldn't even pay the hospital bill. Chioma had to settle it herself as always. A year later, she found herself pregnant again. This time, life was even harder. Uche treated her worst, beating her, starving her, leaving her in pain. The pregnancy was so difficult that Chioma could barely walk. Her workplace had to let her go because she was too weak to walk. 9 long months has passed, and Chioma finally gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But instead of joy, heartbreak followed. Uche abandoned her in the hospital and traveled to Port Harcourt to stay with his family. He didn't even look back. They weren't married. His family had never paid her bride price. Chioma was stuck in the hospital with no money to settle her bills. She had to sell everything she owned, including the goods in the shop she had just opened. With borrowed money and an empty shop, she managed to pay her way out of the hospital and returned home as a single mother. Life started from zero again. She worked day and night, pouring all her love and energy into raising her little girl. And slowly, things began to change. The little girl grew into a smart, beautiful, and ambitious young woman. She made a life for herself, earned her own money, and took care of her mother. Years later, when success surrounded them, Uche returned. He came with soft words and a pleading face, asking for forgiveness, wanting to be a part of the daughter's life, but it was too late. Chioma looked at him, remembering the pain, the hunger, the hospital night, the tears. She held her daughter's hand and walked away. This time, she didn't look back, because some doors once closed are never meant to be opened again. They say the heart of a woman is as deep as the ocean. It can hide pain for years and still smile at the surface. Chioma's heart has been wounded many times, yet she wore her pain like an invisible wrapper, tied tightly so no one could see the scar. When Uche walked away all those years ago, the world tried to swallow her. The neighbors whispered, "She will not survive with that small baby." Friends who used to eat from her cooking pots now turned their faces away. Her days were long, her nights even longer. She hucked vegetables under the hot sun, carried heavy basins on her head, and did laundry for wealthier women in the village. Every coin she made was for her baby Adanna, her sunshine in the middle of a storm. Adanna grew quickly, and with each year she shined brighter. She was the kind of child that made even strangers stop and smile, respectful, hardworking, and full of wisdom far beyond her age. Whenever she spoke, People said, this child will bring blessings to her mother's house. As Adanna entered her teenage years, she discovered talent her mother never dreamed of. She could sing like a morning bird, dance like the wind in a palm tree, and speak with a confidence that drew people closer. Soon, she was earning money from small shows and competition. Little by little, the wall that poverty had built around them had begun to fall. Chioma's shop, which once stood empty like a skeleton, came alive again, stocked with bags of rice, tins of milk, and bright-colored wrappers. She bought a sewing machine and started tailoring, while Adanna saved to put herself through school. Then came the day the past knocked on her door. It was early evening and the sun was melting into the horizon, painting the sky with gold and red. Chioma was outside arranging goods in front of her shop when she saw a familiar figure walking towards her. Her breath caught. It was Uche. But this time was not the Uche she remembered, the man with a loud laugh and careless swagger. This Uche looked smaller somehow, his shoulder bent, his eyes dull. He greeted her softly, almost as if he was afraid his own voice would betray him. Chioma, he began, his words slow, his tone heavy with the weight of years gone by. I know I wronged you. I was young, foolish. I want to make things right. I want to see my daughter. For a long time, Chioma looked at him. Her mind traveled back to the days of hunger, the sound of slap echoing in small rooms, the cold hospital night when she held her newborn and wondered if she would ever live alive. She remembered selling her last possession just to buy freedom from a hospital bed. Adanna stepped out at that moment. She was taller now, her beauty undeniable, the kind that made people look twice. She glanced at the man in front of her, then at her mother. Is this my father? She asked quietly. Chioma's voice was steady when she replied, he was, once. But a father is not just by blood. A father is the one who stays, who protects, who sacrifices. Uche's eyes filled with tears, but Chioma's heart was no longer a place for him to find shelter. She turned to Adanna, took her hand, and began to walk away. Behind them, Uche's voice cracked in the wind, calling their names. But Chioma knew, as sure as the moon followed the sun, that some doors are better left closed. They walked into the glow of the evening, mother and daughter, their heads high, and the wind seemed to whisper a truth as old as the hills. When a woman learns her worth, no man can make her forget it. The story did not end when Uche walked away that evening. In the village, word traveled faster than the harmattan wind. By the next morning, everyone knew that Uche had returned and everyone had an opinion. Some said, Chioma is a wicked woman. She should forgive. After all, a child needs her father. Others shook their head. Abba, that man is a vulture. He abandoned her when the soup was bitter, and now that the pot is full, he has come to eat. But Chioma was not swayed by the talk of tongues. She knew that people who were not there during her night of hunger had no right to speak about her mornings of success. A week later, Uche came again, this time to her shop. He wore a faded shirt and carried a plastic bag with 2 loaves of bread inside, as if that would soften her heart. Chioma, please, he said, his voice low. Let me explain. I was a fool. I didn't know what I had, but I have changed. I want to be in Adanna's life. I want to help. Chioma looked at him for a long time before answering. Her voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of years. Help, she repeated. Where was this help when I sold my last wrapper to buy medicine for our child? Where was this help when I carried basins on my head under the hot sun while you sat under the mango tree smoking? Uche lowered his gaze, shuffling his feet like a boy caught stealing meat from the pot. You left me when I was laying in a hospital bed, bleeding, empty, broken. Chioma continued, her voice trembling now. You left me to bury our child alone in my heart, and you think you can walk in now with bread in your hands and erase the pain. A small crowd had gathered outside the shop listening. In the village, such moments were as rare as rainbow, and no one wanted to miss it. Chioma, Uche began, but she raised her hand. Go home, Uche. Whatever you are looking for here, it is not here anymore. Adanna, who had been listening from doorway, stepped forward. Her eyes were clear, her voice steady. Sir, she said, not Papa, not Daddy, just Sir. My mother is the only parent I have ever known, the only person who stayed, the only one who believed in me. If you want to know the meaning of fatherhood, start by respecting the mother who carried the weight alone. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Some clapped softly, others nodded in agreement. Uche stood frozen for a moment, then turned and walked away, his shoulder even more bent than before. That evening, as Chioma and Adanna sat under the moonlight, the older woman sighed deeply. Adanna, my daughter, she said, life will test you in many ways you cannot imagine. But always remember, a woman's strength is not measured by how much she can suffer, but how quickly she can rise after the suffering. Adanna smiled. Mama, I know, and I promise no one will ever treat me the way he treated you. Chioma looked at her daughter, the pride in her eyes, shining brighter than the stars above. She knew then that their journey had not been in vain. In the distance, the night cricket sang, and the wind carried a proverb from the old storytellers. When the bird that left the nest returned, it should first learn why it was driven away. For days, Uche's shadow moved like a restless ghost through the village. Some evenings, people spotted him sitting under the old Udala tree, staring at the path that led to Chioma's house. Other times, he was seen in the market, asking anyone who would listen to help him talk to Chioma. At first, Chioma ignored him, but when she had heard he had gone to speak to the elders, she knew trouble was brewing. One morning, the village crier gun echoed across the land. Bang, bang, bang! All elders and concerned kinsmen gather at the square before the sun reaches the top of the sky. By mid-morning, the village square was full. The elders sat in a half circle, their wrappers tied firmly, their walking stick resting on their knees. The air smelled of roasted groundnuts and dust. Uche stood before them, wearing a freshly washed set and forced humility. My elders, he began, I have come to seek forgiveness. I wronged Chioma. I abandoned her, but I want to change. I want to be part of my daughter's life. I am ready to pay her bride price and make things right. The elders nodded thoughtfully. In the old ways, a man who married the woman automatically had the right to call the child his own. But one elder, Mpanaji, was not convinced. He said, stroking his white beard, a snake that bit yesterday can bite again today, unless its teeth are removed. Chioma must speak for herself. Chioma was called. She arrived with Adanna walking beside her, both of them dressed in simple but neat attire. Her step was steady, her eyes calm. My elders, Chioma began, I thank you for calling me here. I know our culture values forgiveness, but let me tell you what forgiveness means to me. Forgiveness is when you let go of the pain in your heart, but it is not the same as letting the person back into your life to cause more pain. She turned to Uche. You talk of paying bride price now. Where was this sense of responsibility when I lay in the hospital bed with no one to feed me? Where was it when I sold my last wrapper to keep a roof over my head and our child's? The murmur grew louder. Some elders nodded in approval. Others avoided her eyes, uncomfortable. Uche knelt down suddenly. Chioma, please, I am a changed man. Give me one more chance. But before Chioma could answer, Adanna stepped forward. Elders, she said, her voice clear. I am the child in question, and I do not want this man in my life. I have only one parent, my mother. She taught me to walk, to read, to dream. This man was not there for me. Blood alone does not make a father. A heavy silence fell over the square. Even the wind seemed to pause. Finally, Mpannaji struck his staff on the ground. The matter is settled. Uche, you abandoned your family in their days of hunger. You cannot return now in their days of plenty and expect the door to be open. Go and rebuild your life elsewhere. Uche's shoulders slumped. Without another word, he picked up his small bag and walked away, disappearing down the red earth path. Some said he left the village entirely that same day. As Chioma and Adanna walked home, people whispered blessings to them. At their gates, Chioma paused and looked at her daughter. Adanna, remember this day, she said. A woman who knows her worth cannot be bought with promises, and a child raised with love will never beg for it from the wrong person. Adanna smiled and held her mother's hand tighter. That night, under the moonlight, the village storytellers would tell it like this. A river that abandoned its source will run dry before it reaches the sea. Protect your heart as you will protect your farm in planting season. For wheat grow faster than yams. And so, Chioma's story become a lesson for generation, a reminder that not every door should be opened and not every past should be welcomed into the present.